Hi, in this video, we're going to talk about another recommendation slash best practice for the default environment, and that is to set up a data loss prevention policy that is going to allow for us to create a safe environment and let the intention of the default environment, which was specified by name, which is personal productivity. We want people to make use of the technology and enhance their work lives, but equally we don't want them straying and taking their automation into external services and data that we might not want them to, which we want to reserve for the more official production environments that are more stringently controlled. So what we're going to do is we're going to find ourselves in the Power Platform Admin Center by going to aka.ms/PPAC or PPAC. So I'm going to expand policies on the left and I'm going to click on data policies. So I did have one ahead of time, but just to start from fresh, I'm going to delete this policy and I'm going to click new policy. I'm going to name this default. It's worth knowing that when you're thinking of a naming convention for data policies, that you can apply a policy at an environment or the whole tenant level. So I'm actually, to that end, going to call this personal productivity because I'm going to specifically apply it to the personal productivity environment, and just for completeness I'm going to give it the exact environment name. I'm then going to click next, and now we get into the meat of data policies. So you'll notice that you can set a default group. That's basically going to be any future connectors beyond the ones that we currently see today. Where are they going to end up? But essentially the business and the non-business and the not necessarily the block, but the business and non-business are just names. That could be Joe and Bob. The key bit is that connectors that live alongside each other can be used together, whereas you couldn't use business with non-business and vice versa. So knowing that non-business is the default group, which will leave, so any new connectors are going to come in here, we're basically going to pull out some of the more common connectors that we might be happy for users to use and move them into the business bucket. So to do that, I'm going to start by, I don't want to include anything that's premium, to do that, I probably should not select premium. So let's just get rid of that. And I'm going to basically, the criteria I'm going to use, this is obviously preference within your business, but the criteria logic I'm going to work with here is what services a user's going to use in Microsoft 365 from a personal business perspective. The key bit being business perspective, because Microsoft has commercial variations of their Microsoft 365 business services. So OneDrive for Business is like a user's personal files within a business, but you wouldn't necessarily want them straying into OneDrive, which they've got their family photos in. So SharePoint could be a bit of a sticky one, but I'm working on the principle that OneDrive is essentially a glorified SharePoint document library. So I am going to include this, but you may not want to. I'm going to do OneDrive for Business, but not OneDrive. And I'm now just going to go through. They may want to use approvals, although I'm thinking out loud. My thought process is approvals would probably be more of a business process. So I'm going to ignore that, because what this would also push users into is they might get up to speed with the Power Platform and then start asking questions going, why can't I quite do this in Power Automate? And then you look into it a bit further and go, oh, actually, that's a really good use case. That we want to go ahead with this and we'll help you, but we don't want to do it within the default environment, which is for personal productivity. So I'm going to keep going down. And I'm going to choose the Excel ones. Although part of me is torn here because, again, my thought process is you could have business data in Excel. So I'm going to do Excel Online OneDrive. I'm going to allow notifications. And this is all preference. I'll allow Microsoft Forms. Office 365 Outlook. So the Microsoft 365 iteration of Outlook. I will allow groups because if it's running under the context of groups, it should only give them access to groups which that user has access to. Office 365 users would be my preferred choice over Azure AD. I will allow Office 365 video, not Outlook.com. I will allow OneNote. And just to that point, I probably need to look into this a bit further. I'm actually going to click on Excel Online Business. I've just realized I've deselected some of these. Be careful when you're clicking, just to make sure it holds. Excel Online Business. Microsoft Forms. Outlook tasks. I'm going to remove that actually. You see here, we're going to prevent the use of a lot of external. We'll do Microsoft Teams. And so on. Although the one thing you will, and now once you're happy with your selections, I'm going to do move to business. One thing you will need to be mindful of, actually thinking about it, is that because we haven't added some of these to blocked, they could arguably use this OneDrive connector with Dropbox. So equally, you might want to move some of them out into the blocked, or actually more of them in to the business. But once you're happy, you'll click next. For now, we're not going to talk about custom connector patterns. I'm going to click next. And now the scope is basically, do you want to do kind of a tenant blanket policy, so add all environments, which might be good as a baseline. And I would be torn between doing a default baseline across all, but in this instance, we're going to target it just specifically to the default environment. So we're going to select the environment, add to policy. We can now see that this is the one added to policy. Click next, and then click create policy. So just to put this to the test, we're over in Power Automate. We're in the context of our default environment. And I'm now going to go to create a flow. So let's think of a good example just to show the thought process of the ones that we selected. So I'm going to do a new flow. For the sake of this, I'll just do an instant one and manually triggered, and we'll call it data policy example. So just to bring it to life, if I said, okay, I want to do something with a file in SharePoint, and I would probably want to do something along the lines of, let's do get file. And this is where I probably don't have any content. But let's say, for example, I got the content of a file from SharePoint. So within our company, Microsoft 365 tenant, up to the access of the user, of course. And then I was thinking, oh, I actually want to put this, I want to move a file out of the business into my personal OneDrive. And I'm going to create a file based on that content. So I'm just going to quickly sign in here. And now that we've signed in, you can imagine, so I'm going from business SharePoint, I'm going to move this into commercial OneDrive. And if we look at the flow checker, apart from the missing values, but this operation violates admin data policy, gives you the name of the policy, which restricts the use of the business connector, shared SharePoint Online, with the non-business connector, shared OneDrive. So that's what it's all about. That's the crux of it. And that should hopefully help you determine the connectors that you want to move into the respective data policy buckets. Thank you for watching.